Okay, so I'm going to kick off. There will probably be a few more people arriving over the course of the next few minutes, so just bear with me if I need to sort of break off and let them in. Let me tell you what you can expect from the session today. Can you all see my screen all right? Can I have some thumbs up? Yeah. Good.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, this is my first time doing a full Zoom meeting like this, so I'm hoping that the technology will be on my side. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, fingers crossed. You will probably know more about Zoom than I do, so if I have any technical hitches, I shall be reaching out and asking for help. Just check. Okay. So what you can expect today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the behavioral psychology and neuroscience of relationships and communication as a bit of context. I won't spend too long in that. I want to really try and give you as many tools and practical approaches you can use through the session so that it's a really high value hour for you. We're going to go through a really high-level rudimentary assessment of your primary DISC personality profile. So that means you'll be able to come away with a bit more self-awareness and understanding of how you show up and what that means for the ways you communicate. And then you can also use that to reflect on the stakeholder that you might be struggling with, or the individual that you are having some friction with, because if you can interpret what their DISC style or primary preference might be, that will help you understand what's causing friction between the two of you. We're going to go through some mindset tools, so just some simple little gear shifts in thinking that will help you approach difficult relationships differently, to get better outcomes from them, and to perhaps have more empathy for the person at the other end of the relationship, no matter how difficult they appear to you right now. And hopefully lots that you can take away and apply right off the bat, straight back into kind of working and personal lives after the session. Hi, Christian. Thank you for joining. Hope you're well.
Likewise. Hi there.
Nice to see you. Right. Videos on is great. Videos off is fine. I'll be sharing my screen for a lot of the session, and there'll be various things that you can do throughout. So let's move on. Before we get into the main content of the session, I'm just going to invite you to do a really brief centering exercise. And this is also something that you can take on board and adopt when you are heading into interactions with that stakeholder or those stakeholders that you find difficult. So it's really simple. I'd like you to check in with where your shoulders are right now. Okay, so lots of us carry tension in our shoulders. And when we are thinking about or heading into that interaction with that person that we have friction with, our shoulders tend to kind of rise up. And a really good antidote and kind of way of having more self-control and composure is to check back in with our body. So just take a deep breath and let your shoulders sink down right now. Notice anywhere in your body that you're feeling tension. And when you think about this individual or these individuals that give you cause to feel tension, just want you to notice where in your body you experience that tension. Okay, so check in with shoulders. Also check in with jaw and hands, because those are another two places we can experience those tensions. So we might grit our teeth, or we might be clenching our fists when we're feeling that tension that sometimes comes with dealing with those difficult relationships, those difficult stakeholders that we're struggling with. And I'm going to guess that many of you, or most of you today, are here with a particular person or people in mind that you struggle with. And a couple of you shared with me when you registered for this session specifically what is troubling you, whether it's a boss that's blocking your development opportunities and not kind of supporting you to develop and progress, whether it's someone that leaves you constantly feeling not good enough or undermined, like you're not doing well enough all the time, whether it's someone who's not very professional and kind of makes life difficult, doesn't communicate very effectively. So I'd like you to think right now about that particular relationship that has brought you to this session today. And I want you to rate out of 10 how you feel about that relationship right now. So if you imagine having to go into a meeting or a discussion with that person right now, and 10 is, I'm absolutely fine with it, I'm totally in command of myself, and there's no problem here. And 1 is, I feel tense, this is going to be hideous, it's always really hard work. Can you just jot down for yourself and perhaps pop into the chat with no detail or specifics what number you are at right now in terms of that specific relationship? So I just want you to have a think about that. 10 is, it's absolutely fine. 1 is, it's hideous, I can't bear it. Just let me know where you're at right now in terms of that relationship. And Rajiv, yes, I am recording. I think I put it in the email, but I confirmed, I've just noticed your question in the chat. So yeah, I am recording this session. I'm happy to circulate it afterwards. If anyone doesn't want to be on video, then please turn your video off and be mindful that I'm recording the session to share with people afterwards. Okay, so lots of 1s, 3s, 4s, so some fairly kind of uncomfortable, friction-filled relationships that people are grappling with. A couple of higher scores, good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. What we're going to do is check back in with how you're feeling at the end of the session. Okay, so thank you for doing that. I also just want, I mean, many of you I know, but for those of you that don't know me, a quick 2 minutes. So I'm Victoria Stakelum. I run a business called The Success Smith. Prior to that, I've spent 20 years in the corporate world. Over 10 of those have been in quite senior leadership. And I do a lot of business coaching and mentoring. I am particularly passionate about helping good people achieve good things in business and in life. So I do kind of keynote speaking, a lot of workshop facilitation, a bit like the session today, and lots of individual coaching and mentoring for people that need to create a breakthrough, or for business leaders that need to create business breakthrough and create and cope with the growth that comes with that. So I've trained in NLP. I do a lot of work around personal energy. So bringing composure and presence to the interactions you have, and a lot of the things we do in this session today will delve into that a little bit. It's really only going to be able to skim the surface. So that's just a little bit of background to me and the work I do. So let's come on to the main beef of the session now. I'm going to share an image with you in a second, and some of you will have seen this before, but I'm going to share an image, and I just want you to note down for yourself what you see. So I'm going to put the image up now. I'm going to ask you to note it down, and then in a moment I'll ask you all to share what you saw, but I don't want you to be influenced by each other's answers just yet. So here is the image. Just tell me what you see. Or note down, I should say. Note down what you see in this image, the first thing that you see. Okay. So we've given it a moment there for hopefully everyone to see something in the image. Can you all just jot down into the chat box what you saw first? Okay, so young woman, a fur coat. Who was wearing the fur coat, Katie? Some people seeing a young woman, some people seeing an old lady. Yeah, some of you will be familiar with this image. Okay, so those of you that are familiar with this exercise will understand what I'm setting up here, but two different people can see two different things in this image. So many of you saw the young woman, so here is her hairline. This is kind of the side of her jaw here. Her nose is just poking out. She's looking away from us and she has a feather in her hair. Some of you, 1 or 2 of you, saw the older lady. So this is the older lady's nose. Here is her mouth. I'm assuming you can see my mouse cursor here pointing out. Here is her chin. Both of them are wearing a fur coat. When I first saw this image, it was gosh, it was probably nearly 30 years ago. I was at college at the time. Oh, thank you, Sarah. I'm glad you can see my cursor and point it out. Can you all see both images now that I've kind of highlighted the second image? When I first saw this image, I was doing my A-levels in communication studies, and everyone in the class, barring one person, saw the young lady. This one girl who saw the old lady, as it turned out, was doing lots of voluntary work in an old folks' home. Okay, so she had a context, a reference point, if you like, that was different to the rest of us that were like 17-year-olds and young, you know, our own lives and our self-absorption was our world. So I'm sharing this with you to make a point, which is about neuroscience. There's a concept in neuroscience called top-down processing. And effectively what that means is when we are confronted with any image, situation, event, anything that requires interpretation, top-down processing means we draw on our own context in order to interpret that moment, that event, that thing. And that context, that kind of background information through which we view anything is wholly informed by our own experiences, by the lens that we look at life through. That's to do with the way we were raised, our belief system, our experiences, the things we've seen and heard from other people. So everything informs what we see. And those things trigger then whether we see the older lady or the young lady first in this image. So why is this important? Well, effectively, what you see and experience in the world is not about what's there. It's about what you are and who you are. And internalizing that message can help enormously with every interaction, every communication event that we go through, understanding that we bring lens. And that lens is wholly informed by everything that we know and experience in the world. If you don't have very good self-awareness, it's really difficult to then strip out that lens and view the world differently in ways that can help you improve your personal relationships. So the spoiler alert for the whole session really today is that the answer is you. If you are having difficult personal relationships with people in the workplace, in your personal lives, this works across everything. The answer sits with you, because you can't know that other person's lens deeply. You can have a best guess, you can interpret it, but you can only really know and understand yourself and what you're bringing. You can certainly only change yourself and what you're bringing. And most of us go through difficult interactions in life without having a clear intention of what we want to get out and just reacting to them, feeling frustrated, wishing things were different, and giving all of that energy to something that can't actually change outcomes. So this session today is all about how to get to know yourself and become more intentional in the interactions that you have. And it'll just be a surface skim, as I say, but I really hope you'll get some really useful tips and tricks out of it that you can then bring to bear on those difficult relationships. So with that in mind, let's move into a bit of disc profiling. So this is where I'm going to test the technology and try and switch into a whiteboard view for you. So this could get interesting. But let's have a go. So, right, I am now sharing a whiteboard. Can you guys let me know whether you can see the whiteboard in front of you? Yes, excellent. So far, so good. So I'm just going to draw a couple of lines on this whiteboard. And look, this is a really kind of high level, rudimentary skim through disc profiling. I can run full disc profiles for people if this is something you think would benefit you to have more depth on. This will just give you a feel for your primary disc profile. And for any of you that are familiar with Color Insights, disc is basically the same thing. You can even see the colors on there. So some of you may have been through this process and know and understand what your profile is already. So we'll just skip through this quickly. What I'm going to ask you to do first of all is reflect on whether you tend towards being a task-orientated person or whether you tend towards being a people-orientated person. And a really great question to ask yourself to get a feel for this is, when you wake up in the middle of the night ruminating on something or worrying about something, does it tend to be the stuff on the to-do list? Or does it tend to be the conversations you've had or are going to have? You know, do you have that imaginary, she said this and then I'm going to say this and then I'm going to say this? If so, you're probably more in the people space. But if you wake up in the middle of the night going, oh God, I haven't done XYZ on my to-do list and the deadline is tomorrow, you're perhaps more likely to be at the task end. So do you tend towards people or task? If you tend towards task, I'm going to ask you to put a stamp on the left-hand side of this, not yet. And if you tend towards people, I'm going to ask you to put a stamp on the right-hand side of this. So that's the first dimension. The second dimension is whether you tend to be more outgoing or whether you tend to be more reserved. And I will acknowledge here, this stuff can be very situational. We can have one persona in our personal life and then be quite different in terms of how we show up at work. So think about the context in which this difficult interaction is happening for you, just to kind of give it some edges and something that you can work with. So if you tend towards being more outgoing, I'm going to ask you to put your stamp above the line, whichever side of the vertical line you've decided on for task and people. If you tend to be more reserved, I'm going to ask you to put a stamp below the line. And to think about this one, think about when you need to solve a problem, okay? Do you tend to be someone who prefers to sit down and reflect, mind map, kind of get your own notes and thoughts quietly together in order to solve that problem? Or do you tend to be someone who likes to thrash it out with someone, talk it out, get people's opinions, soundboard it? Okay, that might help you think about whether you tend towards outgoing or tend towards reserved. So I'm going to ask you to mark a stamp. If you can't see where the stamps are, I can see that some of you have found them. If you make sure you're in full screen and then go to options at the top of the screen, and I think there you should find annotate. And if you go into your annotation tool, you can find the stamp tool. Right, so what have we got? Let me just mark these up quickly in case anyone's forgotten. Oh. I think most of you are on, aren't you? Should have marked this at the beginning. Okay, so what that looks like, and bear in mind again, this is really headline stuff. Okay, if you can't find a stamp, so make sure you're in full screen. You found the stamp. Sarah, have you now found the stamp? Can you give me a thumbs up? No full screen because you're on iPhone. I haven't checked how you get to the annotate tools on iPhone, but it looks like you've put a stamp. Sorry, you're telling me where you are on the grid. Perfect. Thank you for doing that. So what this looks like then is that if you are here in the top left, you are probably a D as your primary preference in this context. Again, it's not science. There are much more in-depth questionnaires you can go through to allocate this. So this is like the really high-level shorthand version. If you are top right, you're probably I. If you're bottom left, you're probably C. And if you are bottom right, you're probably S. So D's tend to be outgoing, task-focused preferences, or I don't want to say individuals because this isn't really about your identity, it's about how you show up and what your preferences are within the context that you do the exercise. But I'll use it as shorthand, you will know what I mean. So if you are An I, that's an outgoing preference and very people orientated. If you are a C, that's about being more reserved and more task orientated. And if you're an S, it's about being more reserved and still people orientated. So let me just whip through for you the really headline interpretations of what these different profiles mean. So our Ds tend to be extremely driven, determined, uncompromising individuals. So these are people that like to cut to the chase, get the headlines, very outcome and solution orientated. Just effing do it is the kind of, tendency here. Get the job done, not interested in the detail, motivated by getting results, often motivated by competition and winning and authority. This profile's biggest fear is of failing or of being taken advantage of. So, that's what, if anything you are doing when you're kind of dealing with a D, gives them a sense that they might be taken advantage of, or gives them a sense of failure, whether it's yours or theirs, they are likely to react badly. Okay, so those are our Ds. Is are people-centric, outgoing types. So Is are very kind of sunny and optimistic, often very inspirational, interesting people. They love imaginative stuff, ideas, interactivity, all the I words. Their energy tends to come from being with other people and interacting with people. Is can be a bit easily distracted and are prone towards procrastination or changing their mind or going off topic. They're not, again, I'm referring to these as if they're people, when these are preferences really, but tend not to be great at task and finish type work. So it can be a bit undisciplined. These individuals love praise, love recognition, love to have fun. So if you are an I, or if you're dealing with an I, bear in mind that those are the preferences of that dominant type. And an I preference's biggest fear is rejection, loss of popularity.
Are you going to lock the door?
Someone just popped.
Lock the door. You're going to lock the door.
Ravi, you've just popped off mute, my love.
Oh, sorry.
You're all right.
Gosh.
You're all right. So those are our Is. They're extremely encouraging and enthusiastic about stuff. Is don't always want to hear about reason and risk. So if you are rubbing up the wrong way with an I, it could be, or with a person with an I dominant preference, it could be that they don't want to hear about the risks in this project. They want you to say, yes, I will make it happen. And you just take care of the risks, or find a way to position those risks that they don't have to feel like they're going to get in the way, that you have it all taken care of. So they're positive, they're enthusiastic, they don't want to have that dinked with your kind of reason and rationale. If we come on to our S's then, or S preference people, these are people who prefer to move at a gentler pace, people who value safety, security. These are generally very supportive in their style, very loyal team players, and they seek harmony. One of the risks with S's is that they would rather not speak than risk the harmony of a group. I think one of you shared an issue with not wanting to contradict or offer an alternative in a meeting with one of your teammates because you didn't want to kind of show any discord there or leave them feeling exposed. Maybe you're an S, or maybe in that environment you've got some S preference going on, and that means harmony and the team is more strong for you in that moment than perhaps even getting the best outcome, because maybe your opinion needs to be heard. So think about how these different things can influence the way you show up, and think about your stakeholder that you're struggling with, and see if you can interpret what their preference or style might be. S's biggest fear can be change or loss of security. So they often take a while to warm up to an idea, need things to go a bit slow, need to be kind of brought in, a metaphorical arm around the shoulder, consulted and encouraged along the way if there's a big change taking place or if behavioural change is needed from that person. And C's are, or a C preference is all about detail and quality, accuracy, quality control, doing things right, even if that means not doing them now, efficiency, caution, competence, consistency, compliance with the rules. So our C preferences tend to say, no, we can't do it like that because the rule book says this is how it should work, even if that's actually no longer relevant. C preference people, you know, very keen on process, detail, and doing things by the book. Now, where that can become challenging or problematic is it can tip into perfectionism, paralysis by analysis, there never being the right time or enough information to kind of make a step forward. C preference can prefer written communication because there's less risk of having to wing it or being put on the spot, which is one of a C preference's biggest fears, being expected to just give an opinion without being able to refer to my data and information first. And C's also really dislike conflict. So we'll shy away from it. We'll try and avoid getting into a kind of tussle. Don't enjoy that verbal sparring that might come with kind of a heated debate or exploring and discussing a decision to be made. So that's a really headline view of these profiles. I just want to also show you, and bear in mind how you can use this is think about your own profile, think about the person you're struggling with and what they might need that you aren't currently giving them, and how by adapting your style or giving them more of what they need, you might be able to get better outcomes. So here is what some of these preferences look like when the individual is under pressure. So effectively, traits that are there become more exaggerated. So, you know, a D under pressure can go from assertiveness through to aggression, can become angry, can be very impatient. So that dynamism and pace can turn to impatience and recklessness. And, you know, you can read these for yourself. An I can go from being, you know, inspiring and enthusiastic to being unrealistic, over-optimistic, and kind of putting themselves at risk of not delivering anything. An I's kind of easy rapport building can become manipulative when that individual is under pressure. An S, who, you know, is generally prefers that slower pace and likes harmony, can become passive resistant, stubborn, and kind of dig heels in and quietly resist change when they're under pressure or in a situation where they're not at their best. And C's can become aloof, cold, and inflexible if they're feeling the pressure. So often when we're having difficult interactions with people, it's because either we or they are under some kind of pressure. We feel exposed, we feel at risk, and some of our less helpful traits are bubbling up to the surface. So if you understand your preferences and profile and can interpret those of the other person and recognize what they need, it can game change your ability to meet them in the middle or get better outcomes from those interactions. So with that in mind, and I've probably laboured the point now, you know, your DISC profile or any personality profile, it's not who you are, it's not fixed. My DISC profile has changed dramatically over the course of my career. I used to be high D to the point of terror. I would terrorize my people back in the day. I was so driven and so determined and so ambitious. And what happened is I gained self-awareness. I learned and developed and I adapted my style. So these are just preferences, they're habits. And like any other habit or preference, you can adapt them. And that's not giving up or caving in or becoming a doormat to someone. It's learning the art of being more flexible, of adapting yourself to the demands of the situation. That makes you stronger, not weaker. So I think when we're in these difficult interactions, there's sometimes a bit of a sense of, well, bugger them, I'm not going to change. They're the one giving me a hard time, so I'm going to dig in and sort of do my thing and be myself. Does that serve you? Does it get you anywhere? Because if you keep doing the same things and expect different outcomes, that's Einstein's definition of insanity. So get flexible, adapt your style. Here is what these dominant preferences tend to need. So, you know, our Ds, they want us to get to the point. Don't try and be their friend, not interested in the lovey-dovey relationship building stuff. Be bold, be brief, and be out of there. You know, focus on outcomes, drive performance. Our Is want to feel cheer-led and encouraged. They want enthusiasm. If they've got a vision or they're sharing their ideas, they want you to lean into that and support and encourage and get excited with them. If you can be charming with an I, think about how you can kind of build rapport and friendship beyond your professional relationship. You will get more from these individuals. Our S's need something with more depth. So if an I, that relationship can be more about very headline rapport and kind of verbal friendliness and relationship, our S's need real depth to feel trust, to feel safe with someone. So they want a conversation, not an email. They want their opinions to be heard and valued. With an S preference, it's really important to lean in and listen actively. And then with our C's, it's about providing the details, sticking to the facts. If you are winging it with a C and not disclosing the fact that this is just your opinion, rather than presenting them with the information, you are likely to lose credibility and trust from them. They want evidence, information, facts and data, dates and deadlines, and quality. So that's what our C preferences need on that front. So we've got a mixture of people whose headline primary preference is in each of these. Tell me, thumbs up, thumbs down, those of you on video, or perhaps note in the chat if you're not on video. Does this resonate with you? Do you recognize yourself in this, and does it help you think about the stakeholder you're finding difficult?
I do. Hi, Vicky. I do recognize myself, but in your description rather than where I've placed myself on the graph. So I put myself kind of like in like task and outgoing, like a far D, but the description that you gave, I'm more kind of over towards outgoing and people orientated, I guess. But again, I think what you said about depending on the situation and who you're talking to, I think I can say I would stumble into all of those depending on the situation for sure.
Yeah, and I think, so bear in mind, we're doing this in a very headline way. In reality, there is depth to these profiles. We show up differently in different contexts, and we are not one thing. You know, we have a kind of primary preference. Sometimes we have a strong, so I'm quite yellow red. I have kind of strong on both of those things. So you are a cluster of different dimensions.
I would say cluster definitely describes me sometimes.
And sometimes, for example, there's just one that we aren't strong on at all. I have very low for example, but actually I'm quite strong on the others with a preference for red yellow. So it just gives you a sense of something to work on. I think that the principle here is, okay, how can I use this? How can I use it to think about how I show up when I'm under pressure and what impact that might be having on the people around me or the person I'm having friction with? And how can I try and interpret what's going on with that person, what their style is, and how that might help me give them more of what they seek in order to improve the relationship. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Okay, I'm going to move on because I've just noticed the time and we've still got quite a lot of content to get through. So on that point about understanding the other person, I just want to point to Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I'm sure lots of you have heard about this book and are familiar with it. It's it's got lots of valuable stuff in it. But I think one of the really relevant principles here is about seek first to understand. And only then to be understood. A lot of us head into difficult interactions and we might think, yeah, I'm doing good listening here, but really we're listening to respond. We're listening to make our point, to kind of counter parry what the other person says. But if you can step into that person's shoes and think, what is this person's agenda? If there is friction here, and I'm thinking particularly those of you that are struggling with a difficult boss, what is their agenda? What is it that they are, why are they expressing frustration? What is it that they want? What outcome do they seek? And what is the best way of me supporting that agenda? And a lot of us interpret, oh, they just don't like me, or, you know, they keep undermining me, it's not going well, you know, I'm not good enough. But actually, so often it's about the stuff that's going on with them, and it's not really a whole lot to do with you, but they have a certain sort of personality preference, and that then crosses over with whatever goal it is that they're working towards, or goals they're working towards. And those two things kind of produce this behavior that then goes through your interpretative lens and says, oh, you know, and taps into all of your insecurities and weaknesses. And so the whole thing becomes a bit of a murky mess. So the job, the opportunity is to get clear on your stuff, try and get clear on their stuff, step into their shoes emotionally, put yourself, literally think about what it's like to be that person. See if you can understand what their agenda or goals might be. And look, if you've never asked them that question, why not? What if you were to ask that person that you are having a difficult time with, what are you working on? How can I help you? What is the goal that you're striving for? What are you worrying about today? If you asked that question, what do you think it would do to the relationship? How might it change things? So if you can step into someone's shoes, and look, if we had more time and we were physically in a room together, we could put a seat in the middle of the room and you could go and sit in that seat and imagine that you've stepped into the body and the energy of that person that you're struggling with. And ask yourself, okay, what is it that I want? And if you can think through that and think about how you can meet their agenda better, you will have more favorable interactions. You will have a better relationship with this individual. So give that some thought. I am racing through this. I hope that's okay with everyone. There will be an opportunity to follow up afterwards. So the next thing I want to share, and really it's a continuation of some of the things I've already been speaking about, is a couple of mindset practices for managing yourself. So, you know, a couple of you talked about, I've got a colleague that I get on with, but I get on with them in a personal capacity, but struggle to work with them. Or I've got a line manager who stops development opportunities for me. Or I've got a boss that, you know, always seems to feel that I'm not good enough. So a lot of this can be about how the messages that person gives us, verbally or non-verbally, the feedback we get from them. So I want to talk to you about blue alien theory. So this is a great tool for really honest and deep self-reflection. So this is about deep self-reflection when faced with criticism or negativity, and often difficult relationships from our perspective are because we feel that we're being unfairly criticized or that there's negativity coming our way. So let's just think about that. Criticism, feedback, negativity, undermining, any of these things that we feel we are receiving from someone that is difficult towards us or we have a difficult relationship with. If we strip out all of the information and noise, all of the emotion and noise, it's just information. It's just information until it goes through your interpretative lens and creates a reaction in you and leaves you feeling a certain way. So if you can just nudge those feelings to the side and think, okay, there is information in here. What can I do with it? It's on you to decide how you want to use that information, and why wouldn't you use it to serve yourself well and to help build out and develop your understanding of self and the other person. So look, sometimes when someone's arsey with us, it's just a reflection of their stuff, their inner turmoil, their emotional dysfunction, their childhood noise, their issues of, you know, insecurity or goodness knows what, right? That's their stuff. And somehow you've inadvertently triggered it or ended up on the receiving end of it. Maybe it's because you're so damn brilliant that they feel insecure around you and they take it out on you. Maybe it's because something in you reminds them of something they dislike in themselves. And so they, you know, they give it back to you. Okay, maybe. What can you learn from that? What can you notice about that person? How can you support them better? Okay, that's one thing. I'll come on to why this is blue alien theory in a moment. But here's the other thing. If you are given that information and you have an emotional response to it, what can you learn? What does that tell you about you? If I come along to you and say, you are a blue alien, are you going to get offended? I'm guessing not. You'll probably smirk at me or think I'm ridiculous. Why? Because you are, I think, completely secure in the fact that you are not a blue alien. You are completely whole and secure in that. So you're going to brush it off. You're going to think I'm a bit mad and you're going to ignore me. Okay? But often people say things that we don't feel that we can brush off, that get to us. And that means we're not maybe whole on something. Maybe they've hit a raw nerve. Maybe they've tapped into a fear that we have, something that we are scared might be true, or scared that if we don't do our work might become true. So there is something in us that reacts against that person. Okay, so if people are giving you messages, communicating with you in a way that leaves you feeling reactive, there's something in it you can learn. There's some work for you to do. So if you can bring curiosity to that moment, you can get somewhere useful. You can learn and develop. Then it becomes a gift. That thing that they said to you, that feedback they gave, that criticism, you know, that bullying way, whatever it might be, that's a gift to you now because you can do something with it. And that might help you feel differently and reframe the way those interactions feel. So whenever something like that is going on, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What is it in this moment that is bringing about a reaction in me? Now, this stuff is not easy. This is, you know, it takes deep practice, but you can do it. It's something that all of us can work on and practice with. So to recognize where our stuff stops and their stuff starts, we have to work on that self-awareness. And once you develop that self-awareness and kind of know what it is that you are struggling with or what's triggering a reaction in you, you can become much more clear-headed about recognizing when it's someone else's stuff that you don't need to react to. So it's a great piece of practice to bring in to those interactions. And I'll just share with you this quote from Viktor Frankl. Some of you might be familiar with it. I love this quote. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So often we are just reacting. When that event happens outside of us, that trigger occurs, that interaction occurs, and we react. But actually with practice, if we can take a pause, take a breath, notice our shoulders, feel our hands, we can choose how we want to respond. And in doing so, it game changes the outcomes we can gain from those interactions that we have. And it can have a profound effect on the quality of relationships we build when we are no longer reacting, but instead we're choosing to respond in a way that gives us the outcome we want. And I'll tell a very quick story about this. I had a client who was really struggling with a colleague. He was needling her every step of the way. They were in similarly senior positions, and every meeting he would try and expose her on a problem or undermine her or argue with her. And she came to me with, you know, a sort of confusion and hurt, but also, I am meeting him every time. I will fight fire with fire. You know, I am strong and I'm hammering him back every time. So picture the scene. Someone's throwing a fireball your way and you're going to throw fire back. What do we get if two fireballs collide? We get an explosion, okay? Fighting fire with fire, everybody gets burnt. So there is another way, and that's to fight fire with a fire door, to get heavier, stronger, cooler in your interactions, rather than getting fire and meeting that person in that same energy. So I've used a tool with a different client who was really struggling with her boss, where we explored, okay, what energy is she heading into that interaction with? And she realized that she was bringing an energy that was triggering to her boss. And then in turn, he was kind of bringing her a type of energy back. So I just want to ask, is anyone willing to just very briefly talk about an experience that they're having with a difficult stakeholder? Can I see, I don't know if you want to put your hand up. If no one wants to come forward, I'll just describe this, but it's, if anyone's got a difficult person and they want to just try this out, it's a 2-minute exercise and nothing too exposing. Thoughtful faces. Anyone? Okay, let me describe this then, if no one wants to try this out.
Victoria, I'll do it.
Oh, Fiona, thank you so much. Do you have a person in mind that you have a difficult?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what I want you to think about is, when you're interacting with that person, how would you describe the energy that you feel off of them? What color and texture would you describe it as?
Textures spiky. Color, probably to go with the coldness, cold, icy blue.
Okay, so you're heading into interactions with this person and you are experiencing an energy from them that is icy, cold, spiky interaction. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what energy do you think you are bringing to that person? So thinking about how you feel about them, when you head into those interactions, how would you describe honestly the energy you're bringing? What color and texture would that be?
It's been a lot worse in the past, but since I went back to work face to face with this person from September, with the whole philosophy of everybody needs to be extra kind to one another in lockdown, it's less heated. It was very, very fiery sometimes, and I was having to hold it in. So it's more manageable embers rather than a fire.
Going embers rather than fully ablaze, by the sound.
Yes.
Okay. What energy do you think this person needs or wants from you?
Cooler, quieter.
Okay.
Mm.
Great. So I'm going to ask you to try something the next time you have to go into an interaction with this person, to take a moment and picture yourself bringing cooler, calmer energy.
Mm.
And notice what you get back from them. Notice whether their energy stays cold and spiky or whether it changes shape. Does that make sense?
It does. I haven't done it very specifically like this, but what this sounds like is a more specific like visual aid of what I've tried to do since September more consciously.
And have you noticed a difference in September?
Oh yes, my supervisor said, "How are you managing that, Fiona?"
Okay, great. So for those of you on the call, you can hear this can be quite impactful. The client that I did this with recently was having a terrible time with her boss, and since we worked through this, she is now like his best right-hand woman, and everything's plain sailing. She felt that she needed to leave her job. She no longer wants to leave her job and is very happy to stay, and all is great. So it's a really small kind of thing, but it can have a profound effect on the quality of those relationships. So the principle here is bring the relationship you want. You have so much more power than you maybe imagine. And that's even the case if it's your boss or your boss's boss you're dealing with. You can have a huge influence on how the other person behaves towards you by the energy you bring to that person. But you have to be honest with yourself about the energy you're bringing. And even if you're very carefully managing how you show up and saying the right things and doing the right things, if inside your energy is in a really different space, that is felt and things don't change. So you have to work really hard on the energy that you bring. And that starts to have a profound difference. And again, I just want to remind you, you might be thinking, well, bugger them, why should I change? Why should I work so hard when this person gives me such a hard time? Well, the answer is because it will serve you better. It will make you stronger and it will make your life easier. Okay, so really, how does it serve you to have that gristly energy towards that person, even if you feel that really you're at the receiving end of their negative energy? What if I asked you to make them your best friend? How would you do it? What would you change? How could you make them your biggest fan? It's an interesting thought process to go through. I'm not suggesting that you become a doormat, that you give way or become servile to someone, but it's about learning to bring composure and control to the energy that you bring and to your end of the relationship. And you are 50% of that relationship, but changing that 50% has a profound impact on the 100% of the relationship. So give it a try. Last couple of points here. I've just talked about energy. If lots of your energy is going into grumbling, feeling like a victim, feeling resentful, nothing will change. You're actually disempowering yourself by giving energy to this kind of black hole of frustration and negativity. Can you harness that energy to set an intention and put all of that energy into getting an outcome that you want? Have you thought about, in a perfect world, how I would like this relationship to be, and then bring it? That's where the focus of your energy should be. Most people don't bring intention to relationships. We just bumble along and react. If you bring intention, you will be infinitely ahead of anyone else who's interacting, and you will be able to define the outcomes you want. So give that some thought. And kind of final point for the day in terms of the toolkit and the actions. Action times reflection is how we learn. So I've shared some things you can put into practice today. Try them, apply them in new ways, in new situations, and reflect. Reflect before, how am I going to go into this? Reflect during, what am I noticing about how I'm feeling, about how the other person is reacting? Reflect after, what should I have done differently? What could I do differently next time? Every interaction you have that is difficult is a gift to you, because it's an opportunity for you to try out one of these tools and gain additional information. It's an opportunity to dig in and learn, what is it that is leading to this feeling in me? Okay, so recognize it as a gift and keep practicing. I hope that that's been useful. We've got a minute to go, so pretty much bang on time. If you have found today's information useful and feel like you want to dig deeper, there's a few other ways we can work together. So I can do full disc profiles on you or on your team if you think that you've got some, I think one of you talked about lack of trust and issues with the team, particularly with remote working. So DISC can be a really good way to access that and get people understanding each other. And I also do a lot of general team building and development work. If you feel that you are struggling to understand how you're showing up and why people are reacting to you the way they are, 360-degree feedback and coaching can be a great tool, and I can offer that as well. I have a flagship program. It's a 12 to 16 week program for people who are in leadership or heading towards top leadership and want to have phenomenal leadership composure, presence and impact without sacrificing their integrity. Okay, so for those of you that feel that you have to wear the mask, behave a certain way, toe a certain line to have leadership impact, this program is a game changer. It has over 10 hours of video content, lots of interactive exercises, one-to-one coaching on a regular basis, and also weekly group Q&As. So that's kind of a flagship program for those of you in leadership or heading towards leadership who want to have more presence, composure, and impact. The butterfly program is more on the life coaching side. So this is for people that are fundamentally just unhappy and want to completely transform their lifestyle and their energy to feel better, to realize lifelong dreams and ambitions. And I've also got a program coming soon for business leaders that need to create breakthrough growth. So if any of those things are of interest, please book a call with me. I just need to come out of this slideshow so that I can share the link with you. In a minute, I'll figure out how I can do that. There we go. Let me just get the link for you. So if any of you would like to explore any of these topics further, I have allocated Mondays and Fridays for the next 3 weeks for anyone who would like to have an in-depth coaching conversation. So that will be 60 to 90 minutes. We can tackle any of the topics and subjects I've talked about today, and there is no obligation from that. So that is about exploring and going deeper on anything you've heard if you think it would benefit you and you'd like to explore it further. So getting quick, because I've only allocated certain days, and you know those may get booked up. I think we're okay in terms of the number of people on the call today. That is everything from me. I appreciate we're 2 minutes over time, but I want to quickly just ask if anyone has any questions. Okay, well with that then, I shall just share a final lovely sentiment for you, which some of you will have heard. We can't direct the wind, but we can adjust our sails. So the answer is you. It starts with yourself. Ravi, I'm pleased you'd like to book a session. Go ahead and click the link and you'll find my availability in there. And I would love to speak to as many of you as possible. Again, it's lovely to see some familiar faces, and I hope you found the session useful today. I'd welcome any feedback you have, so please drop me an email with any feedback, suggestions or comments. And thanks, Amy. We can look at this in a bit more detail when we're next together. And I hope to see you all again soon. I have another session in a fortnight's time, 12 noon on Thursday, the 20-something of November. So in a fortnight from today, which is on overcoming fear and procrastination. So if any of you are interested and haven't already signed up for that, the details are on my Facebook, LinkedIn, and on my website. And you're all very welcome. Feel free to share with anyone you know. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Vicky. Bye-bye.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Vicky. Take care.
Thanks, Rajiv. Nice to hear from you.
Thanks, Vicky.
No problem. I'll stick around in case anyone's got any questions.
Are you still on, or are you going away now?
Here, Ravi.
Okay.
Question.
Yeah. I mean, that was very interesting, very fascinating. Thank you so much for that.